He had signed billion-dollar contracts without trembling, but 5 small words from a child in a quiet cafe shattered him in ways his divorce never could. Are you okay? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Ms. Love Stories channel, the place where love, drama, and unforgettable moments come alive. I'm so thrilled you're here, ready to dive into stories that will make your heart race, bring tears, and leave you believing in the power of love. Before we begin, I want to get to know all of you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because in the next video, I'll give a special shout out to some of you amazing viewers from around the world. I can't wait to see how far our love story family reaches. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single emotional journey. Get ready to feel, laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again, because every story we share here is for you. Now, the story begins. Rose. MacPherson had built empires out of steel and silence. Glass towers carried his name. Financial news channels dissected his decisions like scripture. Employees lowered their voices when he entered rooms. But none of that followed him into the cafe. The bell above the door chimed softly as he stepped inside unnoticed. No board members. No assistants. No drivers waiting outside with engines humming. Just the smell of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon, thick in the air. He chose the corner table. Back to the wall. Old habits. The cafe was warm, amber light pooling over wooden tables. A soft acoustic melody drifted through hidden speakers. Outside, rain tapped against the window in patient rhythm. MacPherson stared at his untouched espresso. His wedding ring was gone. The absence felt louder than the rain. He flexed his fingers unconsciously, as if expecting the familiar weight of gold to still be there. It wasn't. Across town, in a bridal boutique glowing with white silk and nervous laughter, Rachel stood on a small velvet platform while a seamstress adjusted lace along the hem of a wedding gown. Not her wedding. Her friend's. Too tight, the seamstress asked gently. Rachel forced a smile. It's fine. But it wasn't the dress that felt tight. It was the idea. Marriage. Commitment. Hope. She watched her reflection. Perfectly composed, carefully supportive. The dependable one. The strong friend. Always the bridesmaid. Never chosen. Rachel, you're next, her friend teased, glowing with certainty. Rachel laughed politely, but something flickered behind her eyes. She had loved once. Deeply. Quietly. And been left with explanations that never made sense. She didn't fear love. She feared disappearing inside it. Back in the cafe, MacPherson finally lifted the cup. His hand trembled. He lowered it again. He hadn't cried during the divorce proceedings. Not when lawyers negotiated settlements. Not when headlines speculated about infidelity. Not even when his ex-wife, cold and composed, said, "You were never really there, Mac." But here in anonymity his chest tightened. He inhaled sharply. The chair across from him was empty. It had been empty for years. He just hadn't noticed. A tear fell before he could stop it. Then another. He lowered his head, shoulders stiff, as if even grief must remain disciplined. No one must see. Powerful men did not break in public. But grief does not respect power. It spills. And just as he wiped his face quickly, almost angrily, a small voice interrupted the storm inside him. "Sir." He didn't look up. "Sir, are you okay?" The voice was soft, curious, unafraid. MacPherson's breath caught. Slowly, reluctantly, he raised his eyes. A little girl stood there, no older than 7. Hair tied in uneven pigtails. Backpack slipping off one shoulder. Chocolate smudged near the corner of her mouth. She held a napkin in her tiny hand. For him. In that moment, the world did something strange. It paused. And if you were sitting in that cafe, if you saw the most powerful man in the city staring at a child offering him a napkin, you might ask yourself, what breaks a man more? Losing love? Or realizing he never knew how to keep it? And as you watch this unfold, tell me in the comments, have you ever been strong for everyone else but broken in private? MacPherson swallowed. His voice, when it came, was unfamiliar. I'm fine. The girl tilted her head. That's not what crying looks like. Silence. Rain against glass. Coffee steaming between them. And for the first time in years, MacPherson didn't know how to respond. The little girl did not move away. Most adults would have. Most adults pretended not to see powerful men unravel. But children were different. They did not respect titles. They did not measure worth by wealth. They responded only to emotion. MacPherson cleared his throat, attempting to reassemble the version of himself the world recognized. I said I'm fine, he repeated, this time firmer. The girl narrowed her eyes slightly, studying him the way children study puzzles. My daddy says when grown-ups say they're fine like that, they're not. That hit somewhere unprotected. MacPherson's jaw tightened. His instinct was to dismiss her, to look at his phone, to retreat into silence. Silence had always been his shield. But the napkin was still extended toward him, waiting. He looked at it, then at her. Her fingers were small, slightly sticky, trembling, not from fear, but from effort. You don't have to cry alone, she added quietly. The cafe sound seemed to dim. Even the rain softened. Something in his chest cracked. He had spent months insisting he was fine. Fine when his wife packed her things. Fine when reporters circled. Fine when his empty penthouse echoed at night. Fine when he signed the final document ending 15 years of marriage. But this child was looking at him as if she could see through the marble. Why do you care? He asked before he could stop himself. The question came out harsher than he intended. She blinked, startled, but not frightened. Because you look sad. No accusation. No agenda. Just observation. MacPherson stared at her, then at the table, then at the espresso that had gone cold. Sad. Such a small word. For something that felt like collapse. I'm not sad, he muttered. The girl frowned gently. Then why are your eyes wet? He let out a broken exhale that almost sounded like a laugh. For the first time in years, someone had asked him a question without wanting anything in return. Not profit. Not advantage. Not influence. Just truth. My mommy says crying is when your heart has too much inside, she continued, climbing slightly onto her toes to reach the edge of the table. Maybe yours is too full. Too full. MacPherson looked at her again, but this time not as an interruption, as a mirror. His heart wasn't full. It was hollow. But the pain of emptiness felt like pressure. He hesitated. Then something dangerous happened. He answered honestly. My wife left, he said. The words felt foreign in his mouth. The girl's face softened immediately. Oh. Not judgment. Not curiosity. Just empathy. Did you make her sad? The question pierced deeper than she could possibly understand. MacPherson's throat tightened. He thought about board meetings that ran past midnight. About anniversaries forgotten. About promises replaced with transactions. He thought about the night she said, I feel alone even when you're here. He had responded with solutions. He had never responded with presence. Yes, he whispered. The girl nodded slowly, as if processing something sacred. My daddy says sometimes grown-ups forget to hug. MacPherson closed his eyes. He had built skyscrapers taller than mountains, but he had forgotten how to hold someone. The bell above the cafe door chimed again. A woman stepped inside quickly, scanning the room with concern. Amara, she called gently. The girl turned. I'm here, Mommy. MacPherson's eyes followed the voice. And that's when he saw her. Rachel. Rain clung to her dark hair. She wore a simple cream blouse and jeans, slightly damp from the storm. There was nothing extravagant about her presence. Yet the room shifted subtly when she entered. Not because of glamour. Because of warmth. Her eyes found the little girl first, relief flooding her expression. Then moved to MacPherson. She noticed his wet cheeks immediately. Not with shock. With understanding. I'm sorry, Rachel said softly, approaching the table. She has a habit of adopting strangers. MacPherson quickly wiped his face, embarrassed. It's fine. Amara tugged Rachel's hand. He's sad, Mommy. The word lingered between them. Rachel glanced at him. Not staring, not intruding. Just present. I see, she replied gently. There was something different about the way she looked at him. She wasn't evaluating him. She wasn't recognizing him. She wasn't impressed. She was seeing him. And that was infinitely more unsettling. MacPherson straightened slightly, slipping back into composure. I'm really okay, he insisted, though his voice betrayed him. Rachel offered a small, knowing smile. Sometimes okay just means surviving the moment. The sentence landed softly, but powerfully. He studied her now. There was no pity in her expression, only steadiness. Amara placed the napkin on the table in front of him, as if sealing a contract. You can keep it, she said seriously. MacPherson looked down at it. A simple white napkin. Absurdly small, yet heavier than any document he had signed. Thank you, he said quietly. And this time, he meant it. Rachel squeezed her daughter's shoulder gently. We should let him have his coffee. Amara hesitated, then leaned slightly closer to MacPherson. You don't have to cry alone next time, she whispered again. The echo, the repetition, it lodged somewhere permanent. As they turned to leave, MacPherson felt something unexpected rising inside him. Not pride, not control, but longing. For connection, for forgiveness, for another chance to answer that question truthfully. He watched them sit at a nearby table. Rachel removed Amara's backpack, brushing rain from her sleeve with tender fingers. Presence. That's what it looked like. Not money, not power, just being there. MacPherson stared at the napkin in his hand. 5 simple words had done what boardrooms, therapy consultations, and distractions could not. They had forced him to confront the truth. He was not okay. And for the first time, he didn't want to pretend. If you were in his place, would you have told the truth? Or would you have protected your pride? Tell me in the comments, because what happens next will test him in ways wealth never could. MacPherson stood slowly. He could leave now. Return to isolation. Return to safety. But something kept him rooted. The child had asked a question. The woman had offered quiet understanding. And for the first time since the divorce, he felt seen. He took a step toward their table, then stopped. Fear. Ridiculous. He negotiated global mergers without hesitation. Yet approaching a woman and a child felt terrifying, because this required vulnerability, not authority. He hesitated, and that hesitation would define everything that followed. MacPherson stopped mid-step. The courage that had flared inside him moments ago flickered under the weight of old habits. Vulnerability was unfamiliar terrain. Control was safer. He adjusted his suit jacket, squared his shoulders, and did what he had trained himself to do his entire life when emotion threatened to surface. He retreated. He placed cash on the table, too much as always, left the espresso untouched, and walked toward the door without looking back. The bell chimed. Rain swallowed him. Across the café, Rachel felt the shift before she saw it. She glanced toward the corner table. Empty. Only the napkin remained. Amara followed her gaze. He left. Yes, Rachel replied gently. Was he still sad? Rachel didn't answer immediately. She watched the rain blur the window, thinking of the man's eyes. How they had carried exhaustion deeper than tears. Some people don't know how to stay when they feel something, she said quietly. Amara frowned. But he didn't do anything wrong. Rachel smiled faintly. Sometimes feeling is what scares them. The rain hit harder as MacPherson stepped onto the pavement. His driver rushed forward with an umbrella, but he waved him off impatiently. I'll drive. Sir? The driver asked, surprised. I said I'll drive. He needed movement. Noise. Engine roar. Something to drown out the echo. You don't have to cry alone next time. He gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Why had it affected him so deeply? It was just a child. Just a question. But it hadn't been just that. It had been exposure. He had been seen in his weakest moment. And worse, he had wanted to stay. The city lights streaked past as he drove faster than usual. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. 3 missed calls. Board meeting updates. Financial adjustments. A reminder of who he was supposed to be. MacPherson straightened, slipping back into familiarity. This was his world. Numbers. Leverage. Negotiation. Not napkins and children's honesty. By the time he reached his penthouse, the softness of the café felt like a dream. Later that evening, Rachel tucked Amara into bed. Mommy. Yes. Do you think he'll be okay? Rachel paused, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. I think he'll have to decide that. Can we see him again? The question lingered. Rachel remembered the way he had looked at the napkin, like it was something sacred. I don't know, she admitted honestly. But something in her chest told her their paths weren't finished. She had learned long ago not to chase emotionally unavailable men. Her past had taught her that lesson painfully. She had once loved someone who always said, I'll fix it. But he had never said, I'll stay. She wasn't interested in another man who mistook distance for strength. Still, there had been something different in MacPherson's silence. Not arrogance. Pain. And pain she understood. The next morning, MacPherson buried himself in work. He arrived at the office before sunrise. Assistants noticed the intensity immediately. He moved faster, spoke sharper, demanded precision. A board member presented a minor delay in a merger timeline. MacPherson cut him off coldly. Fix it. Sir, the logistics. I don't pay you for reasons. I pay you for solutions. Silence filled the conference room. Control restored. Familiar. Safe. Yet even as he signed contracts, his mind betrayed him. A small hand holding a napkin. A woman saying, sometimes okay just means surviving the moment. He slammed a folder shut harder than necessary. Meeting adjourned. His assistant hesitated. Sir, are you feeling all right? The question struck too close. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. For 3 days he avoided that part of the city. He chose different routes, different cafes, different distractions. But the echo followed him. It appeared in quiet moments, in elevators, in the reflection of mirrored walls. Did you make her sad? The child's question replayed mercilessly. And deeper still, the truth of it. Yes, he had made someone sad, because he had been too proud to admit he needed help. Meanwhile, Rachel returned to the cafe 2 days later, not intentionally looking for him. She told herself that. But when her eyes drifted to the corner table and found it occupied by strangers, something in her tightened. Are you looking for the sad man? Amara asked innocently. Rachel exhaled softly. No. But her voice lacked conviction. She wasn't looking for a billionaire. She didn't even know who he was. She was looking for the vulnerability she had seen flicker in him. The part that hadn't been defended. That was rare. And rare things linger. On the 4th day, MacPherson's car slowed unconsciously near the same cafe. He told himself it was coincidence. Traffic. Construction. But his eyes found the window. The warm amber light. The same table. His foot hovered over the accelerator. Keep driving. Return to certainty. Return to power. But something within him whispered, if you leave again, you'll lose more than pride. He didn't understand why the thought felt urgent. He barely understood why it mattered. Yet his chest tightened the same way it had the moment the child asked the question. The battle inside him was not about a woman or a child. It was about identity. Was he the man who avoided discomfort? Or the man willing to change? His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. Inside the cafe, Rachel laughed softly at something Amara said. MacPherson saw it through the glass. And something in him ached. Not desire. Not attraction. But longing. For that kind of warmth. For that kind of presence. He inhaled slowly. Then, the traffic light turned green. Cars behind him honked impatiently. The decision had to be immediate. Move forward. Or stay frozen. And MacPherson, for the first time in years, did not know which version of himself would win. If you were him, would you turn the car around? Tell me honestly. Because what he does next will change everything. The light turned green. Cars behind him honked again. MacPherson's instinct screamed, drive. Instead, he turned the wheel. Sharp. Sudden. A decision that startled even him. He pulled into the small parking space across from the cafe. Before he could overthink it, his pulse was louder than the rain. This was absurd. He negotiated global acquisitions with calm precision. Yet walking into a cafe felt like stepping into emotional combat. Still, he stepped out of the car. The bell chimed again. Rachel looked up first. Recognition flickered across her face. Not surprise, not excitement. Just quiet acknowledgement. Amara gasped. It's him. MacPherson almost smiled. Almost. He approached their table carefully, like a man nearing something fragile. I believe I left something here, he said, voice steady but low. Rachel glanced toward the corner table. The napkin was no longer there. Amara beamed proudly. You kept it. He hesitated. Yes. Rachel studied him for a moment. You look less alone today, she observed gently. He exhaled through his nose. I nearly kept driving. Why didn't you? The question wasn't intrusive. It was open. He answered before pride could intervene. Because I was tired of pretending I don't need people. The honesty surprised them both. Silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was curious. Would you like to sit? Rachel offered. He nodded. And just like that, the billionaire CEO sat down at a small wooden cafe table with a woman who didn't know his net worth and a child who didn't care. Fate has strange timing. As if the universe disliked half decisions, the sky outside darkened suddenly. Rain thickened into a downpour. Thunder rolled low and heavy. The cafe owner approached their table apologetically. Storm warning just came in. Streets are flooding fast. Anyone parked outside may need to wait it out. MacPherson glanced toward the window. Water was already pooling along the curb. His driver was gone. He was stuck. Rachel followed his gaze. Looks like we're all here for a while. Forced proximity. No elegant exit. No dignified retreat. Just shared time. Amara grinned. Now you can't run away. He laughed softly despite himself. I suppose not. Minutes turned into an hour. Rain pounded against glass relentlessly. Other customers trickled out, leaving the cafe quieter, more intimate. MacPherson loosened his tie slightly. A subtle surrender. What do you do? Rachel asked casually. He hesitated. He could say it. He could drop the title and watch the dynamic shift. Instead, he chose something radical. I work too much. Her lips curved faintly. That's not a job description. It's accurate. She nodded knowingly. Work can be a good hiding place. He looked at her sharply. And what do you hide from? He countered. She didn't flinch. Expectations, she answered simply. And men who confuse providing with loving. The words landed heavier than thunder. He swallowed. Is that what I seem like? I don't know you, she replied calmly. But you carry yourself like someone who believes solving problems is the same as fixing hearts. He looked away. Because she wasn't wrong. Amara began coloring at the table beside them. Her crayons rolled across the wood. One fell near MacPherson's hand. He picked it up. Blue. Without thinking, he began tracing small lines along the edge of a napkin. Rachel watched quietly. Do you always draw when you're thinking? She asked. I used to, he admitted. Before life became numbers. Maybe you stopped too soon. Another silence. But this one felt warmer. Less defensive. He found himself telling her small things. Not grand confessions. Just pieces. He mentioned that he had once wanted to build homes, not corporations. That he used to design with pencil and paper before investors demanded scale. She listened. Not interrupting. Not advising. Just listening. It unsettled him. Because he realized. No one had listened to him in years without waiting to respond. Thunder cracked violently overhead. Lights flickered. Then went out. The cafe plunged into darkness except for faint emergency lights near the counter. A few customers gasped. Amara scooted closer to Rachel instinctively. MacPherson's first impulse was control. He stood quickly. I'll check the fuse, he said. The cafe owner waved from the back. It's the whole block. Power lines down. Darkness thickened. Outside, rain lashed the windows like restless hands. Rachel reached across the table, steadying Amara. It's okay. Her voice was calm. Grounded. MacPherson sat back down slowly. For the first time, there was no distraction. No phone. No screen. Just darkness. Breathing. Presence. Rachel's voice came softer now. Are you still pretending you're fine? The question echoed Act 2. He could lie. But something about the darkness made lying pointless. No, he admitted. Her fingers brushed lightly against the table, close, but not touching his. "What hurts the most?" she asked. He inhaled deeply. "The realization that I built everything except what mattered." His voice cracked. "I thought success would make me indispensable. But it just made me absent." Rachel's eyes softened in the dim glow. "Absence can be repaired," she said gently. "Indifference can't." He looked at her sharply. "Do you believe that?" "Yes." A beat. "But only if the person is willing to stay when it's uncomfortable." The storm roared louder. MacPherson felt something shift inside him. This wasn't attraction. Not yet. It was alignment. Two wounded people recognizing familiar scars. Amara leaned against his arm suddenly. He stiffened, then relaxed. Her small weight against him was simple. Trusting. He didn't move away. For once. He stayed. Hours later, the storm began to soften. Lights flickered back on gradually. The world outside looked washed. New. The cafe owner approached again. "Roads are clearing. You should be able to head out soon." MacPherson nodded slowly. He wasn't ready to leave. And that realization startled him. Rachel began gathering Amara's things. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not running this time." He met her eyes. "I almost did." "But you didn't." The difference felt monumental. As they stood, Amara looked up at him seriously. "Are you okay now?" He paused. This time he didn't answer quickly. He searched inward. He wasn't healed. He wasn't whole. But something had shifted. "I'm trying," he said honestly. Amara nodded, satisfied. "That's better." They stepped toward the door together. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle. Streetlights reflected in shallow puddles like scattered stars. As Rachel walked beside him toward the sidewalk, she spoke without looking at him. "Trying is how healing begins." He turned slightly. "Will I see you again?" She hesitated. A decision forming. "That depends," she said carefully. "On what?" "On whether you're willing to keep trying when it's not convenient." Subtext. Challenge. Invitation. MacPherson felt the weight of it. And for the first time since his divorce, the future didn't feel empty. It felt uncertain. But possible. And that possibility terrified him. If you were Rachel, would you trust him yet? The air after the storm felt different. Cleansed. Fragile. MacPherson stood beside his car but didn't reach for the door handle. Neither did Rachel. Amara was busy hopping over puddles, laughing as if storms were games instead of disruptions. "You never told me your name," Rachel said softly. "MacPherson." She repeated it quietly, as if testing how it felt. "I'm Rachel." He nodded. "I know." Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "You said her name earlier," he explained quickly. "Amara." A small silence settled again. Names made things real. A sleek black SUV pulled up suddenly at the curb. Not his. A man stepped out holding an umbrella and hurried toward MacPherson. "Sir, we've been trying to reach you. The board needs confirmation regarding the acquisition. Investors are asking questions." Rachel's expression shifted. Not impressed. Not intimidated. Just aware. "Later," MacPherson said sharply. "Sir, the press is already speculating after the divorce settlement." "That's enough." The assistant faltered, surprised by the firmness. "Yes, Mr. MacPherson." Rachel's eyes flickered slightly. MacPherson. Recognition dawned, not of his face but of the name. The headlines. The billionaire divorce. The public unraveling disguised as legal negotiation. He saw it happen. And for a moment, he feared the shift. There it is, he thought. Distance. But Rachel didn't step back. She didn't step forward either. She simply observed. "You didn't mention you were that MacPherson," she said calmly. He exhaled slowly. "I was hoping it wouldn't matter." "Does it?" she asked. "It usually does." A beat. "For me," she replied gently. "It depends on whether the power is louder than the person." The words settled heavy between them. He studied her. "You're not impressed." "I'm cautious." "Why?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked down at Amara splashing through water without fear. "Because I've loved a man who thought success excused absence." she said quietly. There it was. The mirror. He leaned back slightly against the car, rain mist catching in the air around them. My marriage didn't fail because of betrayal, he began slowly. It failed because I replaced presence with provision. Rachel listened. He continued. She used to wait up for me. Every night. Dinner cold. Smile rehearsed. I'd promise it was temporary. That once the company stabilized, things would slow down. And did they? Rachel asked gently. No. He let out a bitter laugh. There was always another expansion. Another market. Another emergency. His voice lowered. She stopped asking eventually. That was worse than fighting. Silence stretched. The night she left, he said, eyes distant now, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just said, You were never really here, Mac. The memory struck like thunder. I had built everything for her. Or so I thought. And she wanted you, Rachel finished softly. He nodded. Yes. The admission felt like surrender. Rachel looked away briefly, gathering something within herself. My father left when I was 8, she said quietly. MacPherson turned to her fully. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't violent. He just left. For what? For better opportunities. That's what he called it. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. He sent money, birthday gifts, school fees. But he missed my first recital, my graduation, my heartbreak at 16. She swallowed. Provision without presence. The phrase hung between them like shared understanding. So when I say I'm cautious, she continued, it's not because you're wealthy. It's because I know what emotional absence feels like. MacPherson felt something shift deeper this time. This wasn't attraction growing. This was alignment forming. Two people shaped by the same wound. From opposite sides. Amara ran back toward them, slightly out of breath. Mommy. Look. The sky is pink. They both turned. The horizon glowed faintly with the colors of sunset breaking through clouds. Soft. Hopeful. Amara tugged MacPherson's sleeve suddenly. Did your wife leave because you didn't hug enough? The innocence was disarming. MacPherson crouched slightly to her level. Yes, he said honestly. I think she did. Amara studied him seriously. You can practice hugging. Rachel couldn't suppress a quiet laugh. MacPherson surprised himself by smiling fully this time. Is that so? Yes. But only if you mean it. Only if you mean it. Children reduced life to its core. Rachel looked at him thoughtfully. Change isn't proven in words, she said. It's proven in patterns. I know, he replied. And patterns take time. I know. Do you have time? She asked softly. The question hit harder than any accusation. He had spent his life racing forward. Deadlines. Markets. Growth charts. He had never slowed long enough to nurture anything fragile. But now, time felt different. I want to, he answered. Not confidently. Not boldly. Just honestly. She studied him for a long moment. Then nodded slightly. Trying is one thing, she said. Consistency is another. He accepted that. Because she was right. The SUV idled nearby waiting. Responsibility. Reality. His world pulling him back. Can I see you again? He asked. Rachel hesitated. Not to play games, but because she understood what agreement implied. Why? She asked. The question demanded clarity. Because I don't want to repeat who I was, he said quietly. And I don't think I can learn that alone. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't charming. It was vulnerable. Rachel looked at Amara. Then back at him. One coffee, she said carefully. Not as a billionaire. Not as a project. Just as a man learning. He nodded. I can do that. She met his eyes. Then we'll see. As they parted ways, MacPherson entered the SUV with something unfamiliar in his chest. Not control. Not dominance. Hope. But hope is dangerous. Because it can either heal or expose how deep the wound truly is. And in the next act, that hope will grow fragile and real. If you were in Rachel's place, would you give him that one coffee? Or would you walk away before history repeats itself? Because what happens next is where healing begins. Or breaks completely. 3 days later, MacPherson arrived early. Not because he wanted to impress her. Because he didn't trust himself not to retreat if he had too much time to think. The cafe felt different now. Not smaller. Not ordinary. But significant. He chose the same corner table, but this time he didn't sit with his back to the wall. He faced the door. A small but meaningful shift. When Rachel walked in with Amara, she noticed immediately. "You changed seats," she said as she approached. "I'm trying new patterns," he replied. A subtle smile curved her lips. "Good." Amara climbed into the chair beside him without hesitation. "You didn't cry this time," she observed proudly. "Not yet," he teased gently. That made her laugh. And something inside him warmed. No titles. No masks. They ordered simple drinks. No assistants. No interruptions. Just conversation. "So," Rachel said calmly, "who are you when you're not signing contracts?" The question lingered. He thought carefully before answering. "I used to draw buildings," he said. "Before I built companies." "You stopped?" "Investors prefer spreadsheets." "And what do you prefer?" He paused. "I prefer creating something that people live inside." She studied him. "That sounds like someone who wanted to build homes, not empires." He met her eyes. "Maybe I confused the two." Silence settled, but it was comfortable. Amara spilled a little juice on the table accidentally. She froze, expecting correction. MacPherson instinctively reached for napkins and cleaned it gently. "It's okay," he said softly. She blinked in surprise. "You're not mad?" "No. Daddy used to get mad about messes." Rachel stiffened slightly. MacPherson noticed. "I'm learning messes aren't the worst thing," he said carefully. Amara considered this. "Lonely is worse," she concluded. He swallowed. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "Lonely is worse." Rachel's gaze softened. He wasn't performing. He was present. They ended up walking afterward. The streets were dry now. Sunlight filtered through trees, golden and forgiving. Amara ran ahead chasing pigeons, her laughter echoing. For the first time in months, MacPherson wasn't thinking about the stock market. He was thinking about how sunlight caught in Rachel's hair. "How do you do it?" he asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Stay open. After being left." She took a slow breath. "I don't stay open with everyone," she admitted. "Just with people who show up twice." He looked at her. "I showed up twice." "You did." A small acknowledgement. A fragile approval. "And I don't expect perfection," she continued. "I expect effort." He nodded slowly. "I can give effort. But can you give time?" The question returned again. It always circled back to time. He thought of his calendar. Back-to-back meetings. Expansion plans. Deadlines. Then he thought of the empty penthouse. Echoing silence. "Yes," he said quietly. "I can." This time, it didn't sound like ambition. It sounded like choice. They sat on a park bench while Amara played nearby. Wind rustled leaves gently. MacPherson found himself speaking without rehearsing. "I didn't realize how emotionally unavailable I was until someone small pointed it out." Rachel smiled faintly. "Children don't care about your resume." "I'm glad she didn't." "A beat. Rachel." His voice shifted slightly. "Careful. Honest. I don't want to make the same mistake again." "With me?" she asked softly. "With anyone." The correction mattered. She nodded. "That's a good place to start." He looked at her hands resting in her lap. For a moment, he wanted to reach for them. But he didn't. Because this wasn't about possession. It was about patience. As the sun dipped lower, Amara returned, slightly tired. Without thinking, she climbed into MacPherson's lap. He froze briefly, then relaxed. Her small weight against him no longer felt foreign. It felt grounding. Rachel watched carefully. Not testing. Just observing. "You're good with her," she said quietly. "I'm learning." "You didn't have children?" He shook his head slowly. "We always said we'd wait until things settled." "And did they?" "No." A pause. She didn't want to bring a child into a home where she felt invisible. The honesty stung. But it no longer destroyed him. Rachel reached out then, gently touching his hand. Not romantically. Not dramatically. Just connection. You're not invisible now, she said. The words landed softly. Healing didn't feel explosive. It felt quiet. Steady. Possible. As they stood to leave, Rachel faced him fully. I see you trying, she said. And it matters. He exhaled. Relief he didn't know he was holding released. But trying is the easy part, she added carefully. Consistency is where most men disappear. He nodded. I won't. She held his gaze. Then prove it. Challenge accepted. Not with ego. With intention. As they parted that evening, something had changed. Not dramatic. Not reckless. But real. MacPherson drove home slower than usual. He didn't turn on the radio. He let silence exist without fear. And for the first time, the penthouse didn't feel as hollow, because somewhere in the city, someone expected him to show up again. And that expectation felt like purpose. If you were MacPherson, would you truly change? Or would old habits pull you back? Change feels beautiful in quiet moments. It feels possible in sunlight. It feels steady when there is no pressure. But real transformation is not tested in peace. It is tested under strain. And strain was coming. 2 weeks passed. MacPherson kept showing up. Coffee twice a week. Evening walks when meetings ended early. Short calls just to ask, did you eat? Small things. Consistent things. Rachel noticed. She didn't praise him. She observed him. Which mattered more. But success does not like being ignored. And neither does power. On a Monday morning, the board called an emergency meeting. The acquisition he had delayed was collapsing. Investors were threatening withdrawal. Competitors were circling like sharks. You've been distracted, one board member said bluntly. MacPherson's jaw tightened. I've been prioritizing. At the cost of millions? At the benefit of sustainability? Silence filled the room. Another executive leaned forward. Your divorce already shook investor confidence. If you appear unstable again. I am not unstable, MacPherson snapped. But even as he said it, he felt it. The pressure to perform. To dominate. To prove he was still the man who never faltered. That old voice whispered. This is who you are. Not cafe conversations. Not park benches. Power. By the end of the meeting, he had reversed 3 personal decisions. Extended hours. Canceled 2 evenings. Scheduled emergency travel. He stared at his phone afterward. 3 unread messages from Rachel. Amara has a school presentation Friday. She asked if you're coming. A simple yes or no is okay. His chest tightened. Friday was the investor summit. A public appearance he could not miss. Old MacPherson would have responded quickly. Important meeting. Next time. New MacPherson hesitated. Because he knew. There was no next time. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. Finally. I'll try. He hit send. Immediately regretted the wording. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Trying is good. But she needs certainty. No anger. No accusation. Just truth. He closed his eyes briefly. Why did this feel harder than negotiating billion-dollar contracts? Because this wasn't about winning. It was about choosing. And for the first time, the cost of choosing wrong wasn't money. It was trust. Friday came. The investor summit ran long. Reporters crowded him. Cameras flashed. Questions about the divorce resurfaced. Mr. MacPherson, are you concerned your personal life is affecting your leadership? He answered smoothly. Confidently. Controlled. But inside. His phone buzzed. 5:42 p.m. Amara's presentation had started at 5:30. He glanced at the screen. A picture message from Rachel. Amara standing on a small stage, holding a paper sun cutout. Her smile bright. Her eyes searching the audience. His seat. Empty. Something inside him cracked. He excused himself abruptly, ignoring confused reporters. He ran. Actually ran. But traffic was relentless. By the time he reached the school, the auditorium was empty. Chairs stacked. Lights dimmed. Rachel stood near the exit, holding Amara's hand. She didn't look angry. That was worse. I'm sorry, he said immediately. breathless. Rachel nodded slowly. I know. Amara looked up at him. It's okay, she said softly. But children say that when they don't want to make adults feel bad. The weight of it crushed him. I wanted to be here, he said. Rachel met his eyes steadily. But you weren't. No raised voice. No drama. Just fact. And facts hurt more than emotion. I tried, he insisted weakly. Rachel's expression shifted slightly. MacPherson, this is exactly what I meant. He shook his head. I left the summit early. But you scheduled it, she replied quietly. He opened his mouth, closed it. Because she was right. He had tried to balance both worlds without fully choosing. And in doing so, he repeated the pattern. You think I don't see your effort? She continued softly. I do. Then why does this feel like failure? He asked, voice cracking. Because effort without sacrifice is convenience. The words sliced cleanly. He felt exposed, cornered, ashamed. I can't abandon my responsibilities, he said defensively. I'm not asking you to, she replied. I'm asking you not to abandon us when it matters. The silence that followed was suffocating. Old instinct surged again. Retreat. Defend. Rationalize. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, he said sharply. And you don't understand what it feels like to watch a child look for someone who promised to show up. Her voice didn't rise, but it trembled slightly, and that tremble broke something inside him. Amara squeezed Rachel's hand tighter. MacPherson noticed. He saw it. The subtle flinch of disappointment. The micro-shift of trust. He had done it again. Not maliciously, but consistently. And consistency defines character. I can't compete with your company, Rachel said finally. You're not competing. It feels like it. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration spilling over. I'm trying to change. I know, she whispered. But change isn't words, Mac. It's choices. That landed. He looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't rejecting him. She was protecting her daughter. And herself. I can't do this halfway, she said quietly. The finality in her tone chilled him. Are you leaving? He asked. She hesitated. I'm stepping back. The distinction hurt just as much. He felt panic rise. Don't. The word escaped before pride could stop it. But she shook her head gently. I won't let Amara get used to someone who might disappear. The echo of his ex-wife's voice roared back. You were never really here. History repeating. Not because he didn't care, but because he hadn't fully chosen. As Rachel turned to leave, Amara looked back at him. Are you okay? She asked softly. The question returned. But this time, it wasn't healing. It was heartbreaking. MacPherson couldn't answer. Because he wasn't. And for the first time, he wasn't sure he knew how to fix it. He stood alone in the dim hallway long after they left. No cameras. No applause. No boardroom victories. Just silence. And the unbearable realization. He might lose this. Not because he didn't love, but because he didn't prioritize. And love without priority feels like absence. If you were him, what would you choose now? Power? Or presence? The church doors stood open. Sunlight poured in like heaven itself had decided to witness what was about to happen. MacPherson stood at the altar, hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from gratitude. He had once stood in a courtroom signing divorce papers that felt like death certificates. Today he stood in a sanctuary, waiting for life. The guests whispered among themselves. Business elites. Former rivals. Employees who once feared him. Staff who had seen his coldest seasons. They all knew his story. They had watched the headlines. Billionaire CEO divorces wife. MacPherson retreats from public life. Company profits drop amid personal crisis. But they hadn't seen the tears in a quiet cafe. They hadn't heard a little girl ask, "Are you okay?" They hadn't witnessed the moment his heart cracked open again. Until now. The music began. And the doors closed. Silence. Then. They opened again. Rachel stepped in. White lace. Soft veil. But it wasn't the dress that took his breath away. It was her eyes. Not proud. Not guarded. Not wounded. Peaceful. She walked slowly down the aisle. And for a brief second, MacPherson saw every version of them. The young couple laughing in their tiny apartment. The ambitious power duo building an empire. The strangers fighting across cold dinner tables. The broken man in a café. The quiet woman who never stopped loving him, even when she left. She reached him. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she whispered, "Are you okay?" His breath hitched. The same words. The same miracle. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said softly. "Because you came back." A gentle laugh escaped her. "No, MacPherson. We came back." And in the second row, a little girl beamed. Sophie. The child who had unknowingly stitched two souls back together. MacPherson knelt briefly, holding her tiny hands. "You saved me," he whispered. Sophie tilted her head. "I just asked a question." But sometimes, that's all it takes. The pastor began. Vows were exchanged. Not the polished promises of youth, but the tested, weathered vows of people who had broken and chosen to rebuild. MacPherson looked into Rachel's eyes. "I don't promise perfection," he said. "I promise presence. I promise listening. I promise to never sit alone with pain when I could reach for your hand." Rachel's voice trembled. "I don't promise we won't struggle. I promise we'll struggle together. I promise I'll speak before silence grows. And I promise I will never walk away without first fighting for us." Tears fell openly now, even from men who once only admired MacPherson for his balance sheets. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, again, the applause was not just celebration. It was restoration. Months later, the cafe still stood on the same corner. MacPherson walked in, not alone this time. Rachel held his arm. Sophie skipped beside them, swinging her little backpack. They sat at the exact same table. The same one where he once broke. But this time, there were no tears. Only laughter. He glanced around the cafe, and smiled quietly. Pain had not destroyed him. It had redirected him. His company flourished again. Not because he chased numbers, but because he led with empathy. Employees noticed. Investors noticed. But most importantly, Rachel noticed. One evening, as they watched Sophie color at the table, Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she whispered. "If she hadn't walked up to you that day." He shook his head gently. "She did." Rachel smiled. "No. You let her." And that was the truth. Healing doesn't knock down doors. It waits for permission. MacPherson looked at Sophie and then at the woman he loved. "Are you okay?" he asked Rachel softly. She smiled. "I am." And for the first time in years, he knew he truly was too. If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes love doesn't end. It pauses. It tests. It breaks. But if two hearts are willing to humble themselves, it finds its way home. Red Heart. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. Your time, your support, and your presence here mean more than words can say. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or kept you watching, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep believing in love. See you in the next story.